Hi, everybody. Welcome. Today we are here with Jennie Sanders, who is our VP of Faculty Experience, and Stacey Ludwig-Johnson, who is our VP of Operations for the Teachers College. And we're going to be talking about goal setting at WGU, which is in a really powerful transition. You may have heard us talk about it as goal cascading. And today we're going to dive in and learn more about what this initiative is all about with two of the experts who have been primary architects of the new way. So thanks for being here today. Super excited to see you. So to start with, can you each from your perspective give a little sort of insight on the background of this project and your role in it?
I can go first. So for me, it was thinking about how we can align the efforts and the goals of faculty across the different colleges and really to give them more empowerment around their goals. And so we defined some parameters around that, but then really it was for them to think about what do I think would be a leading metric, something that I have a lot of impact on, and what strategy do I want to use to move it and how far? So they're really kind of generating their own goals rather than being handed goals, right? Yeah. And I think that is so powerful, both from an autonomy and like motivation perspective, but also it allows us to learn from them. There is a lot of insight there with our faculty, and that allows us to really kind of capture that in a way that that we can roll up and learn from. So that was really the impetus for my group with faculty.
And can I just to clarify, so in this new approach to goal setting and goal cascading, you know, they're setting their own goals. They're really understanding if these are the big KPIs we're going after, these are the things I can do and the goals I can set for myself in my own practice to move the dial. What is the delta there? What was it before? I mean, how were these goals set before?
Yeah, great question. Thanks for asking. So in the past, we've had faculty set goals around these aggregate sort of 6-month KPIs, right? Whether that's course completion rate or OTP or like a rolling 6-month retention. And all of those outcomes are very, very important. But in terms of how they impact them on a day-to-day basis and how they can learn how to continuously improve their practice, there's a lot of inputs into those that makes it harder for them to really know, what am I doing that's really moving the dial? And so by having them think about leading metrics that they are have a lot more control over that lead into those very important outcomes, that was a different step, was to have them really thinking about what's closer in to my daily work and how can I improve it?
Yeah, and that is so cool because that really does start moving us to a future where our faculty each feel like learning scientists in this process. So that's a super exciting change. And Stacey, can you talk about the piece of this that you've been working on?
Yes, so we tried to, it was through the Operational Excellence and Efficiency Committee. So we did about 16 and a half hours of focus group work with academic leaders to take the fiscal year 21 template and see how we could improve upon that and then lay a stronger foundation working with people and talent for fiscal year 23. The real focus was to really try to identify objective measures of performance and to create a way in which we tried to understand individual scope of responsibility. So in the past, we've set sort of aggregate goals and just focused on continuous improvement. And this year we flipped that paradigm so that we actually set goals at your area of influence. So I focused on sort of program chairs and directors and above. So if you are a director over a certain program or operational grouping, that is the goal set you should have. And then college leaders had college level goals, et cetera. So really trying to identify the scope of responsibility. The other thing that we did a little different this year is we also wanted to give our leaders the ability to unroll those goals and to roll them back up again. So that's been sort of a nice addition this year.
Yeah.
As we move forward.
So as you're both talking, and what's I guess kind of exciting to me about what you're building here is this is for the first time we can see from senior vice president to director to senior manager to individual faculty member we can see for each of those roles their zone of accountability, and then set metrics for those roles that are authentically tied to that person's power and influence and responsibility, right? And we can look at that top down, but we can also look at it bottom up, and that's why we call it a cascade, right? Is it's cascading down, or we're cascading back up, and we can actually see, like, where are there potentially gaps, or where's there potentially weird logic in how we're allocating people and what we're holding them accountable for. And we can look at that at individuals, but we can also look at it for whole teams. Like, what's the ecosystem of accountability at director and above, or across senior managers? So that's super exciting, and that's why we call it a cascade. And the work that you're doing is amazing. And I also want to point out, you said it, but in case people didn't hear it, the amount of work that you have done driving alignment around this, getting feedback on it from everybody, running focus groups, getting more feedback, trying it out, getting more feedback has been really impressive. And I thank you for that due diligence, because this is not something that was imposed from above. This is something that is incredibly organic and will continue to evolve as we build it out. So what's the why here? Why are we doing this? And what's the opportunity that comes out of this?
It's like, which one do you pick first, right? I think for me, I just love the empowerment of every individual contributor, people leader, to really understand not only their zone of influence, but really feel empowered around improving that, right? And feeling that I know now how I'm doing at what I'm trying to accomplish, and I can see exactly how that lines up with our key results, right? So even though their goal won't be, that I've advanced equity by X percent, the way we do at the university level, they know that the work that I'm doing to improve multiple attempt rates or personalized pacing, right? Yeah. The things that they have a lot of control over, that we know how that rolls up very specifically. And I think that's empowering. It really speaks to aim true. Mm-hmm. And I also think it empowers us at the university level to know how we can kind of set our sights, how fast we can move towards those improvements that we all want to see.
Yeah. And I'm really hopeful. I mean, as you're talking, I was just thinking about some of the feedback that we've seen in the engagement survey, where sometimes people, they're super excited to be at WGU. They love the mission, but they are struggling to see and articulate exactly what their role brings to the table, and understand how their role fits into the larger set of work. And it strikes me that this is really ultimately, as it rolls out, an answer to that will really bring clarity to that question. Yeah. What do you think, Stacey?
Yeah, I think the thing that's really powerful is sort of the individual autonomy of setting the goals in this way. And so rather than sort of competing with others, it's like looking at your own individual performance and how can I increase my own performance? And like, if we can all increase the things that we've been doing. So if you compare to last year, or you compare to maybe there's different changes in your programs, but it's really about every day, every month, every quarter, how am I improving upon my performance? And if everyone does, it like raises the bar across the board. I think the other thing that it helps particularly with leaders as well as it helps a lot with decision making, because if you tie those goals and this sort of goal setting to your operating plan, and you have those really key crucial discussions with your other colleagues and your peers and those that you're sharing initiatives with, then you set those sort of guidelines out at the very beginning of the year about what do we think we can accomplish, what am I responsible for, what are you responsible for, and sort of like tie those things together. And I think ultimately that allows better decision making, better use of time. And it also helps, one thing, and we stole this from the work that Jennie did, is she had this really great template around sort of guiding the discussion of what does achieves look like? What does exceeds look like? What does outstanding look like? And for the first time with our leaders this year, we tried to create that sort of template is what it was, but to create that opportunity for a discussion to get at the objective measures of what would it look like if we did achieve or we did exceed. And so you're setting those measures. So instead of at the end of the year scrambling, trying to demonstrate that you met the goals, like up front, and then every month or every quarter, whatever the cadence is that makes sense for your role, you can be going back and revisiting those. And so there's never a surprise at the mid-year or the end of year about where you are in terms of performance. And so I think it creates a great opportunity for conversations. And it might be at the mid-year or at what point it's like, wow, what we thought would be available or what we had planned on isn't there. So what shifts do we need to make? How does that impact downline metrics and et cetera?
Yeah,
So I think it's been good in that way.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up those points. I mean, as I was listening to you, I remembered what I think just recently we were talking to Scott Pulsifer about this work, and he was comparing it to sort of as an athlete, like a swimmer, or if you're racing track or something where you yourself are the athlete. It's you're setting goals against your personal best and trying to increase those, and it's multifaceted. There are many aspects of what you're doing that you're trying to improve on. And by getting that right at the beginning of the year and then building these productive, continuous improvement conversations into your coaching sessions with your leaders, it feels more like a productive, developmental, positive process than, setting goals or not setting goals, as the case often was, and then having a midterm conversation, and then having a final end-of-year conversation where you're trying to prove somehow that you are achieves or you are exceeds or you are outstanding. It just becomes a much more impactful process. And I think, again, related to the engagement survey, we saw people who, put forward really candid and very helpful feedback that they felt like the way we were goal setting in the past felt subjective to them. And those conversations did not feel productive to them. They felt kind of weird because they weren't 100% sure what their goals were to start, right? And they didn't own those goals. Those goals were not their goals for sort of self-improvement and transformation. And so I feel like this really, again, answers that concern that was expressed, and thanks to all who did express and share that feedback in the engagement survey, because it's been really incredibly helpful feedback for us to work with as we've engaged in this project.
One more thing about that, Marnie. I mean, just the clarity and transparency of I know up front what achieves looks like and exceeds looks like. That is very empowering in and of itself.
Oh, yeah.
And also because I think, and I've heard this from some frontline folks, that when we talk about continuous improvement, sometimes it can feel like it's never enough.
Yeah.
Which can easily turn into, I'm never enough.
Right.
And what we're trying to do with this goal cascade is to say, no, you're fantastic.
Yeah.
And we trust you to know where to go next. What do you want to try?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
How do you want to get even better? Not because you're not enough, but because we think you're amazing.
Yeah.
And really empowering that. I think that's a really important cultural message for us to get across.
Oh, yes. I totally agree. And just to riff off that a little bit more before we go to the next question, I think some people are naturally very good at articulating why they're enough. Mm-hmm. They come into this world somehow with the ability to self-promote. Yeah. And then other people aren't as good at that. And they do not have the tools or the capabilities or the confidence to actually express and articulate how good they actually are and what their accomplishments are actually, contributing. And I really believe that this levels the playing field a little bit in that respect as well. Because everybody comes into it knowing what achieves and exceeds is. Everybody knows what the inputs are to that review. And it helps them to understand and articulate their value. And so I love that about this initiative, and I think it also helps people to understand when they're ready to do the next thing as well. You know, so this is amazing work. As you know, I tell you guys all the time, I am so appreciative of this work. I think this is game-changing for WGU, but it's not all sunshine and roses, right? What's been hard about it?
So from my perspective, we've had a lot of learnings this year in terms of how to roll this out, how to gather the information, and especially the data in a way that it can roll up in a way that makes sense. And so we have some great lessons learned from that, having a bit more definition, but still keeping that autonomy around the actual goals. So moving forward, we'll probably have like a more defined set of metrics that, depending on the role, and again, these are more leading metrics, the things that faculty have a lot more direct control over. And then also some metrics that we kind of want to try on.
Yeah.
And it'll be up to the faculty member if, which of those they want to choose to set a goal against. And then they set that goal. So I think we learned a lot about just what makes this easier to really roll up and really see that direct connection, and then gather the learning to really understand the drivers that help us get better and better at predicting in what contexts different things need to move to really hit our key results.
Yeah, and that is really complex work, because we know what works in one course or one program or for one learner population might be very, very different. And as a faculty member, you may have a very diverse set of learners in your cohort. And so being able to set goals against that and track them that's admirable and complex, but it's the work ahead, right?
Yeah, it'll take a few years to get it just right. So, we're all learning together. We welcome the feedback. But it's really worthy. And I think it's what our people deserve. It's what our students deserve.
Oh, yeah. And it's super cutting edge in higher education. So, and Stacey, what have you learned? What's hard about this?
Exactly what she said. I think it's everyone getting comfortable with the learning science aspect of it. I mean, for the first time, I'm going to jump over to the faculty side. Like, you've identified inputs and people committed to them, and we've measured them. What's going to be hard is when people do 100% of the effort and they hit those inputs and they don't move the needle in the outcomes that we expect them to. And we have to realize, okay, what we had assumed were the drivers for certain success metrics may not actually be. Yeah. But for the first time ever, we'll be able to actually show that, we had a commitment to actually trying those particular inputs. So I think that'll be challenging. The other is just sort of getting agreement around even the student success metrics and comfortable with what are the metrics that making sure that we've got people group the groupings together for programs so that we really could get down to individual sort of scope of responsibility.
Yeah.
Because I think that's the most important is where can you move the lever to actually have an impact? And so that, we had to go through a couple different exercises to get some of those things. And then we made a shift, which I think was really positive, and we pulled the leadership principles in to the template this year. So they were always sort of part of the work that you did in Workday, but they weren't necessarily tied into sort of the conversations and template, and sort of making that shift that as a leader, you not only have leadership principles that you're working on, but that it's even more important that you're identifying ways in which you're building and supporting the leadership development of the other leaders the others on your team.
Yeah.
So making that shift, but it was positive, but it was just, it's a different mindset in the way we look at it. Yeah.
It's a shift, which is always hard. And it just strikes me, it's all data. Like the engine and the enabler and the accelerator of this work is access to data at a level that historically we didn't have access to. And over the last, 2-3 years, we have really incredibly different access to program level data and course level data and individual performance level data. How are you supporting this with data, and where do you see that capability going in the next couple of years to sort of evolve this approach?
I'm going to let you go first this time.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I think that the first thing that we're doing, number one, is that we have not in the past taken our student success outcome metrics, and I'm talking about sort of that roll down, so university and then college, but then more importantly, sort of operational or academic grouping and even program level grouping, and actually looked at those sort of against our success metrics on a monthly basis. So that's the first thing that we've done is we've taken what was in the template, we worked with IR, and now our leaders will be able to look at those each month because we never want anyone to not know what they're out, what are the goals that they're working against. So that's probably a little, I'll say, easier than the work of sort of the roll up of EAs and SLAs. And I think that was the thing we found out we missed is that we were looking at it from a college view, and then now we're working with the student success team and with Debbie Fowler's organization because the evaluators and our student services teams, as an example, have these marvelous SLAs. But we had not really pulled those into the template in a way, so they were trying to sort of fit into, and it didn't quite work. So that's the improvements we'll be doing for fiscal year 23. And then can you imagine from a college level, or even if you're sitting in a student success team and you're, let's say, more accountable to a particular college, like to be able to see, here's the outcomes at the college level, here's the SLAs, and oh, that's how they're actually impacting each other. I could see that moving forward just being really powerful, as well as the faculty roll-up.
Yeah.
Which
Right.
you've done some really nice work with the Power BI dashboard and things like that. So
Yes, there's, and not everyone will know necessarily that we have a BI dashboard now for leaders so they can actually see the goals across their groups kind of at a glance, right? So it's so much easier to see that alignment and that focus as a manager or a senior manager. So that's a big win. Where we're trying to go, I mean, we have essential actions and SLAs now, so we can measure responsiveness to certain events in a student's journey much better than we ever could before. And the research that we shared in the fall in the town hall, I think really spoke to how impactful that can be. But we really want to get to the other types of inputs, the behaviors that are not just responsive, but what are the proactive behaviors and the experience behaviors, right? Like when a faculty member is doing a really fantastic job, how does that show up, right? In data. And really working towards that so we can help them really continue to professionalize and really create instructional excellence. And when I say instructional, I mean like program mentors as well. They're programmatic instruction.
Any
So,
intervention.
Yes.
In fact.
Yes, exactly. So we're building out a few new metrics in fiscal year 23, and it will be an ongoing process. And I actually welcome input from faculty about what you wish you could measure, right? Like if you could measure a certain thing to know that you are having the type of impact you want on your learners, what would that look like? We've done a lot of thinking around it. We have some ideas, but I always would welcome the input.
Yeah, in fact, that's a really important point because the more we can generate and sort of almost crowdsource from faculty a sense of what the real inputs are and what those metrics might be, the faster and more gloriously we can improve this system as it evolves over the next couple of years.
Yeah, and it really helps us with the root cause too.
Yeah.
I mean, with those outcomes, again, so important, but faculty have important levers, but not the only ones.
Yeah.
And if all we can see is a course completion rate is going up or down,
Yeah.
and all we do is say, well, okay, what are the course people doing, right?
Yeah.
Okay, now we don't know where to focus, right? And that might be the right place, but it might not be. And right now we're kind of blind.
Yeah.
So it just makes it so much easier for us to partner together to solve the right problems.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, again, this is amazing work, and it's not only great for all the operational reasons we've discussed, but it really is point of the spear in higher education and understanding how learning and learning systems work and how they work for particular learner populations and how what we do can truly impact outcomes and move the dial on student success in the really ambitious ways that we want to at WGU. So thank you. You both are treasures at WGU. The work that you're doing is amazing and powerful, and I wish you all the best of luck on it as we continue to move this initiative forward. And I think you might be changing the world, at least at WGU. That is.
Fantastic.
Thanks so much.
Thanks,
Thank
Marnie.
you.
The Provost Update is your opportunity to share good news happening across the academic organization. Let us know when you or someone you work with has been involved with something exciting and noteworthy. Reach out to us with your news and story ideas at academicnews@wgu.edu. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.